بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري وأحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Thank you all so much for coming today. This is our, inshallah, our fourth installation of our lecture series on Alam Iqbal. Inshallah, today my goal is to, inshallah, finish the Shikwa so that we can, inshallah, get into the Jawab Shikwa. So inshallah, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of things that I did want to mention before is that certainly a lot of things that as we go through Allama Iqbal's poem of the Shikwa is that there comes a little bit of an internal kind of dialogue that someone can have when they hear a lot of this really bold, somewhat controversial poetry. And I want to go back to one of the things that I mentioned before, which is the kind of, and I like to use the example of my wife, where it's just like when you have like a bunch of brothers and sisters who all are trying to have a conversation with their parents, right? And they all have all of these pent-up complaints that they want to make to the parent, and it's not every one of those siblings gets the opportunity to complain, right? And it's usually the favorite child that everyone looks at, and they say, you know what, you are going to complain on all of our behalves. And so, and when that favorite child does complain, everyone else looks and they're like, oh my God, like that was so much be'adbi, that was so disrespectful. If I ever talked to my parent like that, I would get the chappal, right? I would get the backhand, right? But for some reason, when my sister or someone makes those same kind of comments, and they toe that line of adab with the parents, for some reason it's forgiven, and actually a lot of good ends up coming from that. And this is where in our history, and particularly there are certain individuals who Allah has gifted with the opportunity to even have the opportunity to complain. And Allama Iqbal is one of those people who is complaining on behalf of the entire ummah. And so certainly one of the kind of things that certainly can bubble in the back of the head is that, wow, like this is a very weird, almost shirky type of controversial kind of, like how dare he be so rude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? How can you dare get away with something like that? And so one of the things that I want to dispel is that, honestly, just looking at the word shirk in and of itself, right? If even in the Urdu language we say that this is a shirkat, right? That this is a congregation of people, right? And so shirk in and of itself means to put something else in the vicinity of God, or in a position where they can be comparable to God in some way. And so if anything, with that basic kind of definition of what shirk is, right? And that is to, sometimes we, and the Prophet ﷺ would say, وَيْلٌ عَبْدُ الدِّنَارُ وَعَبْدُ الدِّرْهَمْ, right? Like may there be destruction on those who are abd, or slaves of the gold and the silver coin, right? And it's just like anything that we think that we can complain to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the biggest shirk. And so in and of itself, complaining to Allah is the biggest opposite to that, right? It is the opposite of shirk to actually complain to Allah, because Allah is the only one who's A, going to listen, and B, who has any capacity to be able to get us out of the position that we're in. And so that was the first thing that I want to mention. There's a couple of other things that I want to mention, but we'll get to those when the time actually comes. So that's where I want to kind of reiterate, because this stanza is actually going to be one of the most intense. And it's going to certainly get into a lot of kind of the boldness of what Allama Iqbal is trying to say. So the second piece is that when coming back to that favorite child kind of metaphor, or honestly, even when it comes to the intimacy between a husband and a wife, or the intimacy that certainly as a parent-child as well as the husband and wife, where it's just like there is no, even if you take the physical hijab, like there is no hijab between you and the one that you are married to, right? There's that level of intimacy. And honestly, right, like a husband and wife, there isn't really much that they won't say to each other. And certainly when you have when you have that level of intimacy, the lines of adab become different, right? And so there are a lot of transgressions that if someone from the outside were to hear it, they'd be like, wow, that was really rude. But that's honestly how a intimate relationship ends up actually carving even deeper bonds. And so that's where that's where I wanted to kind of just set the preamble before we actually get into the poetry itself. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, inshallah, as we get into this. So this is where we were last time. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Safai dair se batil ko mitaya humne, no insan ko gulami se छुड़ाया हमने, तेरे काबे को जबीनों से बसाया हमने, तेरे कुरान को सीनों से लगाया हमने, फिर भी ये गिला है कि वफादार नहीं, हम वफादार नहीं, तू भी तो दिलदार नहीं. And so you guys can see okay, excellent. So the way that it starts is, once again, there are big themes in the poem itself. The first is the preamble that we did last time was, why, oh Allah, should you even listen to my complaint, right? Look at the strength of my history, look at all that I accomplished, and then I'm going to use that as leverage for you, oh Allah, to actually listen to me. So that was the first chunk of that was the first 12 stanzas. Now the next 10 to 15 stanzas are going to be the complaint itself. And this is where things get very raw. This is where the complaint really hits home. So he's saying, oh Allah, from the pages of history, we erased falsehood. And we liberated, we emancipated the human race. We emancipated the human race from slavery, right? The biggest, and I'll do the commentary afterwards, inshallah. This time our overall structure is going to be different. Inshallah, I'm going to try to get through that big theme, and then inshallah I'll open it up for any comments, and then inshallah we'll move forward. So safai dair se batil ko mitaya humne, we erased falsehood from the pages of history. We emancipated the human race from slavery. Tere Kabe ko jabino se basaya humne. Basane in Urdu, basane means to spread out in a beautiful way. Right? So what's the first thing? May Allah give all of us the ability to go to the haram. The first thing that you do is you cling onto the cloth of the Kaaba and you rub your face into it and you weep. Right? Usko basana kehte hain. You're spreading out. You're using your forehead as a way to spread out the cloth of the Kaaba. Tere Quran ko seenon se lagaya humne. We took your Quran and we put it to our chests. Phir bhi ye gila hai ki hum wafadar nahi. And still, there's a complaint that we aren't faithful, that we aren't loyal. Hum wafadar nahi, if we aren't loyal, tu bhi to dildar rahi. Allah, that even if we aren't faithful, then oh Allah, you also have broken our hearts. Right? We have gone through so much, we have done so much. Right? This comes back to almost watching your little sister complain to your dad, and you're like, oh man, that's the same dad that would, right? That you see that raw angst of Allah. We have done so much for you. Why are we in the position that we're in? Oh Allah, I look around me and I see what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza, in Kashmir, in Burma, and I see all of and being in the West, you see all of the refugees that come here and you hear their stories and you cry and you weep tears of blood. And oh Allah, like if this isn't heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, oh Allah, if we look into our own history, some of the greatest genocides, massacres have happened to us. Why? Right? This is a part of that raw human experience where it's hard not to breathe, honestly, fire when you hear what's going on around the world. And so he's saying, oh Allah, we've done all of these things. We have shown you our loyalty time and time again. how is this happening to us, oh Allah? Like our hearts are breaking, and you are ala kulli shay'in qadir. You have everything under, you are the one who controls everything. And we believe with every ounce of our being that you control everything. And so when we see bad things, our hearts break. And our hearts are breaking. And this is where it gets bold. They're breaking because of you, oh Allah. And so now going to the next one. इस उम्मत और भी हैं, उनमें गुनाहगार भी हैं, इस वाले भी हैं, मस्त माए पिंदार भी हैं, इनमें काहिल भी हैं, गाफिल भी हैं और होशियार भी हैं, सैकड़ों हैं कि तेरे नाम से बेजार भी हैं, रहमतें तेरी अगयार के काशानों पर, बर्फ गिरती है तो बेचारे मुसलमानों पर. Oh Allah, there are other nations as well. Among them there are sinners, and among them there are modest people. Among them, there are people who are intoxicated with arrogance. Among them, there are lazy and heedless people, and among them, some that are smart and clever. And oh Allah, do you know that there are so many that are disgusted with your name? That are disgusted with your name. And oh Allah, your mercy descends, it feels as though your mercy descends on the treasuries of the other, while the only thing that hits the poor Muslims is lightning. I mean, it's hard to say. It almost feels like this was written yesterday, right? I mean, you see that. I mean, honestly, we're in the West. We're surrounded by people. Atheism is the new religion of the masses, right? People, and atheism in and of itself is what? A disgust in the name of Allah, right? The separation of church and state. Right? There is so, and I'm going to digress just slightly, where there is a man who wrote Man's Search for Meaning named Viktor Frankl. I don't know, has anyone heard of Viktor Frankl? Man's Search for Meaning? No. This is a man who survived the Holocaust. Viktor Frankl is a man who survived the Holocaust. And in his book, he writes about, he actually himself was either a Jewish rabbi or somewhere in kind of the Jewish clergy. And he talks about his journey to atheism because of the Holocaust. And he was in Auschwitz. And in it, one of the things that he says is that now, and he talks about how in Auschwitz there was a trial in which all of the the Jewish rabbis, they put God on trial, and they looked at their history, right? The destruction from Nebuchadnezzar, the destruction from Titus, the destruction from the Pharaoh, and they looked at all of these things, and they right? The Jews are fantastic lawyers, right? And so in their legal mind, they said that that God is guilty of being bad to us. That's what he says. And because of it, and that every intellectual Jew should have that God should be put on trial. And that after that A'udhu Billah, that God should, because he's guilty of these crimes, God should be Na'udhu Billah, nakle kufr nabashud. May the imitation of kufr not turn into kufr. But one of the things that he says is that God should be killed, right? And that's where a lot of this thing comes in, where it's like God is dead, right? And unfortunately, that then subsequently in the West has become atheism, right? That God is dead, the only thing that matters is time. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that he says after that is even more interesting, is that now, he says, now that God is dead, there is a God-sized hole in the human consciousness that nothing can fill. And that leads to what? Abject hopelessness. This is what we call postmodern, right? Even if anyone who's kind of studied literature talks about this as postmodern literature. There's nihilism, right? Hedonism, right? This is where a lot of these philosophies come from, right? And this is where Allama Iqbal is saying, it's like look at what these people are doing. Right? We actually love you. We put your Quran to our chest. We actually, humne tere Kaaba ko basaya apni jabeenon se, right? We used our foreheads to wash the Kaaba. And there are others that are na'uzubillah, doing all of these crazy things, and yet they're the ones who grow richer. They're the ones who get their coffers, their treasuries are bursting, while the only thing, and from them must pindar, right? One of the things that he's saying is that they are drunk, they are intoxicated in their arrogance. It's hard not to look around in some of the leaders that we have today, may Allah protect us, in the pharaohs of today, that there is nothing but drunken arrogance. And he is saying, but for some reason, when lightning strikes, when the bombs fall, they fall on the Muslims. They fall on the Muslims. This is his complaint. Do you see how raw this is? Now he's saying, man. Sorry, I'm gonna get probably emotional, but बुत सनम खानों में कहते हैं मुसलमान गए हे खुश उनको के काबे के निगहबान गए मंजिल दहर से ऊंटों की हुदी खान गए अपने बगलों में दुबाए हुए कुरान गए खंदजन कुफर है एहसास तुझे है कि नहीं अपनी तौहीद का कुछ पास तुझे है कि नहीं. He's saying the idols in the temples, the cathedrals that are built in the hearts, in the egos of men, are crying out that the Muslims are gone. That the Muslims are gone. And they are glad that the guardians of the Kaaba are gone. And they're saying from the world stage, the drivers of camels are gone. They're saying that they had their Quran and they took their Quran with them and they have left. They're saying that kufr, infidelity, is mocking you, Ya Rab. With this whole, what was the point of the whole Viktor Frankl story? They're mocking you. They're saying that you are dead, Ya Rab. They're saying they're mocking you. Do you not feel it? Do you not feel this? And then he says, oh Allah, do you not care about your own tawheed? Do you not care about your own oneness? I'm going to give a quick story here. Primarily to enunciate the Hudi Khan thing. Right? The camel driver is a very common motif that's used in Islamic literature. Right? Because right, the Prophet ﷺ was the greatest of camel riders and the camel herder, and there is something about being in touch with nature, with animals, that helps kind of honestly liven your own spirit, that helps you kind of break away from the monotony of the day to day and give you some semblance of purpose. And so one of the most beautiful poems, and this is in Arabic, that I heard recently, it's from Ahmed Mu'min, who is, if you ever YouTube, it's Songs from the Rubble. He is in Palestine, he's in Gaza, and he has this poem, and I wanted to share this poem with you because it has similar complaints. It has similar complaints. He says, Shayl ajamali shay, ya hawa taqballah. He says, oh Allah, no, sorry, he says, Shayl, it means keep going, ajamal, oh my beautiful camel rider, keep going. He says, may Allah protect you, oh my camel rider. Dammi shahid mimma tarm al-hayl, that the blood of our martyrs smells like sweet cardamom. And he continues to say, Wail ad-dhalimi wailu min Allah. Oh oppressor, may you be destroyed by the will of Allah, may you be destroyed. And so this concept comes back, and right where you see in the setting of oppression, of tyranny, of hopelessness is not the right word, but in this complaint to something bigger than yourself of Allah. Oh Allah, are you listening? Oh Allah, listen to the complaint, listen to the cries of all those who have gone before us and of those who are honestly dealing with such hardships today. Oh Allah, do you not hear that they are questioning your tawheed? Ye shikayat nahi hai इनके खजाने मामूर नहीं महफिल में जिन्हें बात भी करने का शऊर कहर तो ये दिस इज फनी कहर तो ये है कि काफिर काफिर कहर तो ये है कि काफिर को मिली हूर व कसूर और बेचारे मुसलमान को फकत वादे हूर अब वो अल्ताफ नहीं हम पे अनायात नहीं बात ये कहने की बात ये क्या है कि पहली सी मुदारात नहीं oh yeah Rab our complaint is he's saying I'm not complaining but he's complaining he is saying yeah Rab I'm complaining he's saying I'm not complaining but do you not see that their coffers of their treasuries are bursting oh Allah these people the people who have the most wealth in the world are the ones that don't even know how to properly, who don't even have the intelligence to speak in a gathering. I mean, unfortunately, you just need to hear one White House press briefing, and you're just like, man, that was not a sentence. That was not even a complete sentence. And then he says, and then this part is funny, right? And this just reminds you that this is clearly a man writing this poem, that they're a lot wealthier than us, and the sad part is that the kafirs, that the people who don't even believe in you, they have castles and they have beautiful women. And for some reason, all that the Muslims are really promised are beautiful women when they die. And I'm just going to leave it there. Ab wo altaf nahi, hum pe anayat nahi. Oh Allah, we have been deprived of the former subtlety of your grace. That when we had your grace, Ya Allah, there was elegance. Right? And we recently just came back from Spain and Morocco, and you come back and you go to those places and you see, honestly, that fallen glory that was Islam in Muslim Spain. And you see this beautiful elegance there. You can feel the silent adhans. You can look on the dirt and you can see the imprints of prostrations that are no longer honestly ever going to be there. At least not in, I mean, I hope this comes back, but you see that there are the erased signs of prostrations there. And you see that even in the Masjid of Cordoba, you see that even in the Grand Mosque of Seville, they've preserved the architecture, the elegance of the Muslims, but up on top they have the crest of Isabel and Ferdinand, of the people who got the better of us. And so this is what he is complaining about, that he is saying that, what happened, Ya Rab? Why don't we have your love anymore? What is the matter? Why are we deprived of your love? What have we done? क्यों मुसलमानों में है दौलत दुनिया नायाब तेरी कुदरत तो है ना हद है ना हिसाब तू जो चाहे तो उठे सीना सहरा से हबाब रह रवे दश्त हुई सीली ज़द मौजे सराब ताने अग़ियार हैं रुसवाई है नादारी है क्या तेरे नाम पे मरने का एवज़ खारी है. He's saying, why is the wealth of this world so rare and out of reach for the Muslims? Why is it that wealth is so out of reach when your power, Ya Rab, has no accounting nor any limit? Right? Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Right? Allah, you have everything. We have nothing. When we know that you have the power, and he's giving examples of mu'jizas, of miracles, he's saying that you can even make the desert's bosom burst and produce bubbles of water, like it did for Hazrat Ismail. You can quench the desert traveler's thirst from the waves of the mirage. Right? When you look at the mirage, it looks like shining waves that are coming towards you. He's saying, Ya Rab, you have the ability to quench the thirst of the desert traveler with nothing more than the waves of the mirage. SubhanAllah, that's such a beautiful metaphor. And then he says, others leave us with nothing but disrespect, and they disgrace us and they leave us impoverished. I mean, honestly, we don't really need to go very much further than looking at the economic world order of how the creation of the third world, right, where all of us come from, I mean, ye zillat hai ya nahi, right? Is this not a snatching of our izzah? Is this not a snatching of our dignity? And he says, Ya Allah, we die in your name. This is what we get. We die in your name and this is what we get. Bani aghyar ki ab, this is hard. Bani aghyar ki ab chahne wali dunya, reh gayi apne liye ab khayali dunya. Hum to rukhsat hue aur unhe sambhali dunya. फिर ना कहना कि तौहीद से खाली दुनिया से हुई खाली दुनिया. हम तो जीते हैं कि दुनिया में तेरा नाम हो. कहीं मुमकिन है कि साकी ना रहे, जाम रहे. Ya Rab, the world has now become for others. And this is interesting because it comes from a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that Islam started as ajib and will end as ajib. Ajib, not in Urdu, ajib means strange, but in Arabic, ajib means, right, the outsider, right? And so Islam started as a strange, weird phenomenon, and at the end of times it will also once again become a strange, weird phenomenon.
Like it is now.
Like it is now, right? It's just like, oh, you pray 5 times a day, right? You don't do this, you don't do that, you like it, right? And so he looks, and so he says, the world has now become for the others. He says, we are only left with an imaginary world. We have departed, and others have taken over the world. Do not complain now, Ya Rab, do not complain now that the world has become devoid of your oneness. That even mentioning, thinking about things like God, about the oneness of God is now a strange topic now. When we actually lived, we lived with the singular purpose that your name, Ya Rab, remained in this world. Another poem that Allama Iqbal has is right, this is the best, sorry, I'm going to finish the translation and I'll get into that. He's saying that when we lived, the entire purpose of our being was to make sure that your name was spread and that it would remain in this world. And then he gives the metaphor of, is it possible for the cup to remain when the cup bearer does not? Right? And he continues this metaphor of the cup being Allah's tawheed and the cup bearer being us, right? Remember the metaphor of the flower and then us being the fragrance? Us being the breeze that spread that fragrance? Once again, this is kind of coming full circle, right? Where it's just like, man, what's the point of the flower when there's no breeze to manifest its beauty? Sorry, one of the ayah of the Quran that sticks into my head is Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. Oh Allah, my salah, my inna salati wa nusuki, my salah, my worship, wa mahya, my life, wa mamat, my death, lillahi rabbil alameen, is only for the singular purpose of you, Ya Rabb. Is only for Allahumma rabbana ja'alna min. Oh Allah, make us of those people. That the singular purpose of our life is that. And this is where that complaint comes from. That intimacy with Allah. Teri mahfil bhi gayi, oh man. Teri mahfil bhi gayi, chahne wale bhi gaye. Shab ki aankhein bhi gayi. Subh ke naale bhi gaye. Dil tujhe de bhi gaye, apne sila le bhi gaye. Aake baithe bhi na the, aur nikale bhi gaye. ए उशाक गए वादा फरदा लेकर अब इन्हें ढूंढ चरागे रुखे ज़ेबा लेकर. Oh Allah, Mahfil is like your congregation or your people or your ummah. Oh Allah, your ummah, your people are gone. And the people who love you are gone. The people who would spend all of their nights in ibadah and would spend their nights crying out to you, oh Allah, they're gone. Oh Allah, the ones who would wake up at dusk and cry your name, oh Allah, they're gone. Dil tujhe de bhi gaye. They gave you their heart, Ya Rab. And oh Allah, you blessed them. Apna sila le bhi gaye. They took their rewards. They took their rewards for all of the things that they did. They came and they sat down. And they sat down for such a short time and they were kicked out. They were kicked out. Ay ushaq, the lovers came and they took their promise for the future. Ab inhe dhoond. Oh Allah, we're still looking for those people who love you. We want to be of those people who love you. Oh Allah, we're looking for those lovers. We want to be, right? One of the words, wali, is a friend of Allah, but a friend who is a sacred friend. We're looking for those friends, Ya Rab. We're looking for them. And we're trying to take, and this is where Allama Iqbal is now, actually the camera has focused back onto the audience now. Allama Iqbal is mentioning the audience now, is talking directly to the audience, and he is saying, if you want to find those lovers of Allah, take the radiance, the nur, the brilliance of your own face and use that to light up the world so that you can find them. Because you can't find those people. It's hard to find those people now. Oh man, this is where it gets beautiful and poetic. Dard Layla bhi wahi, कहस का पहलू भी वही, नज्द के दश्त तो जबल में रमे आहू भी वही, इश्क का दिल भी वही, हुस्न का जादू भी वही, उम्मत अहमद मुरसिल भी वही, तू भी वही, फिर ये आज़ुर्गी गैर सबब क्या मानी, अपने शैदाओं पे ये चश्मे गज़ब क्या मानी. Has anyone heard the story of Layla and Majnun? Right? Does anyone know Majnun's real name? It's Qais, right? And so he is saying the pain of Layla to be with her Majnun is still there. And Majnun feels that same pain. The Najd, and this is a quick geography lesson, Najd is, all of Hijaz is the western coast of Saudi Arabia, all the way down to Yemen. Hijaz is the particular province within Najd, which is Makkah and Medina. So he's saying Najd is this, right, that desert valley. He's saying that he's saying that the deserts and mountains of Najd are the same. He's saying the flight of deer, right? And usually this is a huge metaphor for like the run of the gazelle and the eyes of the gazelle are manifestations of beauty, right? And often it's used in poetry when it comes to intimate poetry and poetry between lovers. And so Allama Iqbal is bringing back that intimacy with Allah. He's saying that the heart of the lover is the same, and the intoxication of beauty is still the same, and the ummah of Ahmad Mursil, of the most praiseworthy Rasul, the ummah is the same. Ya Rab, we are the same. Ya Allah, you are the same. So then what's the meaning of this displeasure without reason? Why have you started to look at us with displeasure? Right? Can you just, I mean, a lot of us here are, you can just, this is an intimate example, but certainly when you have someone that you love deeply with all of your heart and soul, if they even look at you weird, you feel it, right? वो कहते हैं ना, उर्दू में कहते हैं अपनों ने फूल मारा, right? That even the ones who are the closest to you, even if they look at you with displeasure, it hurts even more than the words that they could say. And he's saying, Ya Rab, why have you decided to look at us with such displeasure? Why are you looking at us with such displeasure? We thought we were the ones that you loved the most, right? One of the hadith Qudsis is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if the Kaaba was broken brick by brick, that Allah would prefer that the Kaaba is broken brick by brick rather than the heart of a believer be broken. That the Kaaba itself cannot contain this is a hadith Qudsi, that even the Kaaba cannot contain Allah, but the heart of the mu'min can contain. Subhanallah, right? This is where this intimacy, this love comes in. And so tujhko choda tujhko choda कि रसूल अरबी को छोड़ा, बुत गरी पेशा किया, बुत शिकनी को छोड़ा, इश्क को इश्क की आशुफ्ता सरी को छोड़ा, रस्म सुलमानी ओवैसे करनी को छोड़ा, आग तकबीर की सीनों में दबी रखते हैं, जिंदगी मिसले बिलाले हबशी रखते हैं. This I have to give a little bit of a preamble before translating this. This is where you're just like, where you're towing the line of adab, and even like, definitely like kind of coming back to that metaphor of your sister kind of talking to your dad. It's just like, I did this, I did that, Dad, like I like all of these other things, and then you're just like, chill, you definitely didn't do any of those things, right? Where Allama Iqbal is taking everything that has happened in the history of, I'm going to say Islam, but I'm going to use it broadly and loosely, right? From Prophet Noah, from Prophet Adam, from Prophet Isa to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to all of the Sahaba. He's saying all of those things, we did that. He's saying we did that. And now he's going even a step further. He's saying, Ya Rab, we are just as good as they are. And you're just like, no. And it's funny because the next stanza will correct this, but he's saying, Ya Rab, we didn't leave you. We didn't leave the Arabian Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We did not start bartering in idols. We definitely have, but that's a different story. We never left breaking idols. We kind of did, but this is where it's interesting. Now you're starting to see, and this is where the Jawab Shikwa will come in later, where now the beauty of what the complaint is showing, the complaint is starting to show the chinks in its own armor. He's saying that did we forsake love? Did we forsake your love, Ya Rab? Did we forsake the madness that comes with love? Right? Did we forsake the customs of Salman the Persian? Did we forsake the customs of Awais Qarani? Rahmatullahi alayhi, radiallahu anhum. Radiallahu anhum ajma'in, right? Did we, right, all of it, we still live our lives the same way that they did? Definitely don't. But he's giving these examples, right? Why is he using those examples in particular? Salman Farsi, right? He is the one who literally was a nobleman who sold himself into slavery just to be able to get to know his Rabb better. And Awais Qarani is the one who wanted to do the same, but instead gave himself in this servitude of his mother. And because of giving himself to the servitude of his mother, he never got to see the Prophet ﷺ. In Yemen, yeah. And even then, the Prophet ﷺ sent not only Hazrat Abu Bakr, but Hazrat Umar as well, to go to Awais Qarani and say, pray for my ummah. Subhanallah. Awais al-Qarani was that big of a deal. And so Allama Iqbal is saying that we're still just like them. And he's saying that although we can't say the takbir, Allahu Akbar, we can't say it full-throatedly, but the fire of that is still burning in our hearts. Just like who else? Bilal the Abyssinian, radiallahu anhu, right? When because of him being a slave, he couldn't openly confess to his Islam, but when it was found out and he was crushed under that giant rock that was scorching hot from the desert sun, what did he say as that rock pressed on his chest? Ahadun ahad. Ahadun ahad. There is only one. There is only one. And so he is saying that we are no different than that, Ya Rab. And certainly, if you want to take it in a different light, there are certainly our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Kashmir who have certainly shown that have salvaged some semblance of dignity for us as the Ummah. And they themselves are going through those levels of tribulation and are certainly coming out on the right side of history. And so, Ishki khair wo pehli si ata bhi na sahi. Now he's walking it back. Jada pemaye taslim aur raza bhi na sahi. Mustarib dil sifate qibla numa bhi na sahi. Aur pabandi aine wafa bhi na sahi. Kabhi हमसे कभी गैरों से शनासाई है बात कहने की नहीं तू भी तो हर जाई है. This is probably the most controversial of all of the things that he says. He says, now he's walking it back. He's like, all right, we're probably not quite as good as Bilal Habashi and Awais Qarni and Salman al-Farisi. And he says, it's true that our love has lost its former elegance. He says, we are no longer treading on that path of love. Right? This is why he's also called Hakim al-Ummah. Right? The physician or the diagnostician of the Ummah. Right? Not only does he see what's wrong, but he sees why it's wrong. And he says, the compass of our hearts is also lost. And we are no longer following the laws of fidelity to you, Ya Rab. Right? But sometimes, Ya Rab, you show so much love and compassion and kindness to us. And sometimes you do that to others. And we see. Certainly, right, one of the things is that when it comes to that level of intimacy and that intimate relationship, right, jealousy is a part of it, right? And, right, if you know, my wife looks at somebody else the wrong way, then I'm just like, oh, I get really jealous, right? It's the same way. He is saying, Ya Rab, you're supposed to love us, and you're shedding your eye of love on everybody else who I totally believe does not deserve it. And he's saying, this is, once again, you really have to delve into the metaphor of that this is an intimate conversation between two lovers, Allama Iqbal and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to understand what he's saying. And certainly this is why this is controversial. He is saying, Ya Allah, sometimes you're close. Shinasai is actually a very intimate word. Shinasai means actually like that, like someone that you hug or that you embrace. He's saying, Ya Allah, sometimes you embrace us and sometimes you embrace others, and we are getting real jealous. And he's saying, I shouldn't say this, but you are also harjai. Harjai in the Urdu language means, honestly, the best kind of modern translation is you're a flirt. Is that you're playing us one day and you're playing everybody else, somebody else. And even in the Quran, Allah says, right, that we will test you by giving you honor and taking it away. By giving you health and taking it away. By giving you wealth and taking it away. And Allama Iqbal is taking it in the other direction, where he's just like, Ya Allah, that to me sounds like disloyalty. And so that's why a lot of people, naturally, right, I can just imagine all of the people with really long beards being, oh man, that's kufr. And it's just like, it's not, right? Because ultimately, what is kufr? Kufr is to take something and cover it and let it seep and rot. Allama Iqbal is doing the opposite. He's tearing it open and bringing it out to the open. And he's saying, Ya Allah, this is my complaint. This is the crux of my complaint. Now the complaining is over. The complaining is over, and this entire theme of complaint is now completely finished. And now the next big part is actually going to be वो कहते हैं ना कि दिल जब हल्का हो जाता है ना फिर then you get to actually get to it, right? When your heart, right, when you're angry and you have a fight and you're just like, oh, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this, these are all my complaints. Now that I'm done venting, now I get my head back on straight. And now this is him bringing his head back together. And now the remainder from stanza 23 to 31 is going to be a dua that he makes for himself and for the ummah. This is where the entire focus changes. And we start to see Allama Iqbal cry for us. So I'm going to stop there. Let's just do 5 minutes. And just, because now this theme is finished. Let's do a quick 5 minutes. We've gone through 10 stanzas over the course of about 40-ish minutes. Any comments? Any concerns? Unfortunately, we don't have mics this time. Any question that you have, I will repeat it. Or any comment that you have, I will repeat it so that we can, all those who aren't here can actually hear it as well. Any thoughts, feelings, comments? Not all at once. Ji?
There was a poet, Ukrainian poet. His name is Ilya Kaminsky. And something that you read reminded me of a work that he wrote a few years ago. And there's a line in his poem, and in that it says, in the trial of God, we will ask him, why did you let all of this happen?
Right.
And in response, there will be only an echo. Why did you let all of this happen? Allah. Right? It's interesting. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So, I don't know if I'm going to repeat that, but I don't think I could do as good of a job as you just did, mashallah. That does, remind me of the beautiful kind of Sufi saying, I was at God's door and I knocked, and I knocked, and I knocked. And I knocked until my knuckles wore thin. And then I realized I was knocking from the inside. SubhanAllah. Any other comments? Okay. So inshallah we'll keep going so that we can open it up maybe at the end. Our plan is to go just till 8. Thank you, Brother Hamza, for that comment. सिर्फ फरां पे किया दीन को कामिल तूने, एक इशारे में हजारों के लिए दिल तूने, आतिश अंदोज किया इश्क का हासिल तूने, फूंक दी गर्मी रुखसार से महफिल तूने, आज क्यों सीने हमारे शरर आबाद नहीं, हम वही सोख्ता समा हैं तुझे याद नहीं. And so he's saying that so this is an allusion to Khutbat al-Wida, the last khutbah that the Prophet ﷺ did, and it was in the valley or in the peak of Faran, the hill of Faran, in which he is saying, Ya Rab, in one divine gesture you took the hearts of so many. Right, so many people, right, even in the Quran, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, right, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting this right in the middle of this. Oh my God, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, right, and so like that people will come into that people are coming into your religion, أفواجا, right, like literally throngs and rows and just so many people are coming into your religion. Right? And so that's an allusion to the Sir Farah, to the peak of Farah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that so many people will be coming into your religion. So many people have now become captivated by that final divine dispensation that is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And so you have made the pursuit of love a burning passion. And you have breathed your warmth into the congregation of the Ummah. Why is it that our breasts are not filled with the sparks of love anymore? What's wrong with us, right? This is Hakimul Ummah, right? The doctor of the Ummah. He is saying we are that same pile of burnt out ash. Don't you remember? He is saying, Ya Rabb, right? We still have that kindling. Set us back on fire.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
I know the comments were earlier, but sometimes something comes to
please,
as the stanzas, right? So, as there was so up till now, there was a sense of disillusionment, and just like hopelessness, and it feels like, it's literally like a picture of today, with the state of the Ummah, and I think we talk about Gaza multiple times every session, but of course, since that is the major world issue of our time, like this current minute right now, Sudan, and there's a lot of other places too, but it's interesting how this just resonates with the fact that that has made a lot of people actually accept Islam, like in places that you would never expect, like from TikTok and all these places, people are seeing, the faith of the Palestinians. And for myself also, actually, I feel like it's made me a better Muslim, seeing that, how these people have such strong faith, despite what they are going to. Until the very end, as you mentioned a few stanzas ago too, that those are the people from Gaza, from Kashmir, the shuhada are coming out on the right side of history, and so it's interesting just to see, I guess, that light at the end of the tunnel. And as dark as things seem right now, it really is like, who would have, just from a political landscape, like who would have thought Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Miss Rachel, that all these people would be championing the Palestinian cause, like from Candace Owens, like people who were like the most conservative, random kids TV show host. So it's, it's all so relevant today if you think about it. It feels like it wasn't written that long ago. This is like very much the picture of the world today.
Thank you so much. Not sister. All right. Bismillah. Thank you so much for that beautiful comment. I will. We only have 10 minutes left. I'm going to try to get through all of this because I really do want to get to Jawab Shikwa next. So I'm going to go a little bit faster now. Right. The big ayah here is Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam dina. Right. That on this day I have completed your religion. On this day I have completed upon you my blessing, and I have chosen and I have made pleasing to me Islam. And so he's saying we are still that burnt out pile of ash, but we still have that same kindling. And so Wadi Najd mein wo shore salasil na raha, kaise diwane nazara mahmil na raha, hosle wo na rahe, hum na rahe, dil na raha. Ghar ye ujda, this is where he diagnoses it perfectly. Ghar ye ujda hai ke tu रौनक के महफिल ना रहा ए खुशां रोज this is Persian ए खुशां रोज के आई ओ बसद नाज आई बेहिजाबा नासुए महफिल मा बाज आई. So he is saying the noise of the chains no longer ring in the valley of Najd, right? That no longer are there people in the valley of Najd that have pledged their servitude to you. And now, Qais, Majnun, is no longer Majnun, he's now Qais. He's just a regular guy who no longer yearns to see Layla's palanquin, right? That closed caravan that you put, right? That essentially that floating room that you put on top of a camel that a woman who does parda, who actually does hijab, who actually can shelter herself in. He no longer wants to see Layla. What's going on? He's saying that temperament has gone, we have gone, our hearts have gone. The reason that this house is desolate because you are no longer the sole purpose of our gathering. right? Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. If the point of our lives is no longer Allah, then there's no point to our lives. So then in Persian he's saying, oh, those happy days, when will your celebrations come back? He says, when will you come back without a hijab? This is another one of those beautiful intimate references, right? He's saying, he's almost having this conversation with Allah, like, right? Because we can't see Allah. He is in alimul ghaib, right? We can't see him. Ya Rabb, we just want to see you without a hijab.
Like a lover.
The same, huh?
Like a lover.
Like the way a lover would, right? And so this is where all of this is coming. बादाकश गैर है गुलशन में लबे जू बैठे सुनते हैं जाम बकफ नगमा कूकू बैठे दूर हंगामा गुलजार से यक सू बैठे तेरे दीवाने भी मुंतज़िर हू बैठे अपने परवानों को फिर ज़ोक़े खुदा फ़रोज़ी दे बरक देरीना को फरमाने जिगर सोजी दे. A lot of this is poetry that alludes to older poetry, to Rumi and to Hafiz Shirazi and all of these others, but we'll get to that. The others, right, these others that have taken our place in destiny, in history, are now intoxicating themselves in a garden right next to the edge of a river. And they're drinking their wine and they're listening to the cuckoo's call with the wine cup in their hand. But in that same garden, but far away, far from the ruckus of that crowd, your lovers are sitting patiently, waiting for who? Right? Allah who? Right? The translation of Allah who is Allah? He is. Allah is. And they're just waiting again for that intoxication. And I'm going to take a quick pause here, is that the reference to alcohol is not uncommon in Near Eastern poetry. When it comes to poetry in Pakistan, बादकश गैर हैं गुलशन में लबे जू बैठे सुनते हैं जाम. हाँ यार बिस्मिल्लाह, I'm going to try again. बिस्मिल्लाह. बादकश गैर हैं गुलशन में लबे जू बैठे सुनते हैं जाम बकफ नगमा कूकू बैठे दूर हंगामे गुलजार से यक सू बैठे तेरे दीवाने भी हैं मुंतज़िर हू बैठे अपने परवानों को फिर ज़ोके खुदा फ़रोज़ी दे बर के देरीन को फरमाने जिगर सोज़ी दे. So others, so kind of coming back to that initial allusion of, the world was once ours, now others have taken it. And not only have they taken it, but they have sat down and started to drink wine in our garden at the edge of our beautiful river, right? And they are the ones who are listening to the cuckoo's call with a wine cup in their hand. But in that same garden, far away from the ruckus of the crowd, your lovers sit patiently waiting for who? Grant your moths a relish for a self-kindling of dignity. Give to the ancient lightning a command to reignite our passion. And so the commentary for this is that he is almost like Jannat tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, right? Like the rivers from which beneath which the gardens beneath which rivers flow. He's using that metaphor. He's saying those gardens, right, that have these self-irrigating rivers, those were promised to us. And we're sitting in that garden so far away from it, seeing that others have taken our garden. Others have taken our Jannah. And not only that, but they are the ones who are drinking the sharab, right? The sharab and tahura, right? So once again, these are metaphors for heaven. They are sitting there and they're drinking our wine. And they're listening to the cuckoo's calls. and they're just having such a good time. And we're the ones who are relegated to the other side of this garden. And we are simply sitting here. We are your lovers who are simply sitting here and waiting for who? Right? One of the things that, right, we always say, right, even we rock our children back to sleep with it. We say Allahu, Allahu, right? That Allah, it is Allah. Allah, it is Allah. And so he is saying that those lovers are patiently waiting once again to hear your name, Ya Rab. And so, in order to understand the next part, right, there is, right, like in English, there's that that saying, right, like fighting like cats and dogs, right? There are certain animals that are always associated with something else, right? The cunning of a fox, right? The bravery of an eagle. The moth is a very common motif in honestly in Islamic literature, because the moth is the one that falls so much in love with light that it's willing to collide into the light and make itself nothing. I'm going to say that again. The moth, right? If you ever look at the moth outside, if you ever just have a candle, the moth will come to the candle the way, right? The way that almost like a lover's reunion, right? It collides into the flame. Even though it knows that it will burn itself in that passion, it still runs into that flame. He's saying, oh Allah, give your moths, aka me and you and all of us, give us back that rekindling of love and dignity. And then he is saying, oh Allah, give the command to your lightning, right? Barke derina, right? That ancient lightning, give it another command to ignite our souls. This is, right? You hear the dua now, right? The complaining is over, now it's all dua. This is beautiful. Qom awara ina tab hai phir sue hijaz. Le uda bulbul be le uda bulbul be le uda bulbul be ले उड़ा बुलबुल बेपर को मजाक परवाज मुस्तरिब बाग के हर गुंशे में है बुए नयाज तू जरा छेड़ तो दे तशना मिजराब है साज नगमे बेताब है ना नगमे बेताब है तारों से निकलने के लिए तूर मुस्तर है इसी आग में जलने के लिए. Oh man, there's a lot of historical references here, and it's beautiful. He's saying, right, remember that initially when we talked about Bangidara, right, like the example of the caravan that's going through the desolate desert. He's saying that he's giving the example of, he's using the metaphor of a caravan to describe the ummah. He's saying this wayward nation that has lost its path has now finally reset its compass towards Hijaz, back towards Makkah and Medina. It's found its true calling. Right? So now the complaining is over. Now you can start to see the dua. He's saying the relish of flight has carried away even the wingless nightingale. He's saying that, this is beautiful, he's saying that he's giving once again the example of us as the ummah, of a bird with broken wings. He's saying, Ya Allah, may your passion ignite so heavily that even a wingless bird, even a bird with broken wings finds its flight again. And then he is saying the fragrance of self-esteem is restless inside of every flower bud. Right? Coming back to that example of, the ummah being the fragrance, right? He's saying that now the breeze, because of what's happened to the ummah and our humiliation, despite that the flower's bud is waiting, yearning for that fragrance to come back, because the fragrance is bursting, ready to fill the entire garden with its beautiful with its beautiful fragrance. He's saying, just start the music. The instruments are just waiting to be plucked. And so he's giving the example now of, right, the most, and it's interesting, sozo saz, right? Music and burning passion are very similar words. You always say soz and saz, right? Saz is the music, but soz is the thing that makes you make music. right? So he's saying that the instruments are ready to make music. All they need is for someone to pluck their strings. It's ready. Right? He's saying that, oh Allah, like this is starting to get to the preamble of the Jawab Shikwa. This has become, instead of a complaint, now this has now become a dua. He's saying the instrument is waiting to be plucked. The melodies are restless to emerge from those strings. He is saying also, the mountain of Tur is ready to burn again. Right? Where was the burning bush? It was in Tur Sini, right? It was in the mountain of Sinai. He's saying that same mountain is ready to combust again in flames. मुश्किल उम्मत मरहूम की आसा कर दे, आमीन. मोरे बेमाया को हम दोषे सुलेमा कर दे, जिनसे नायाब मोहब्बत को फिर अर्जा कर दे, हिंद के दैर नशीनों को मुसलमान कर दे. जुए खून मी चखद अज हसरत दीरीने माँ, मी थपद नाले नश्तर kada सीना माँ. So that last part was Persian. So he's saying, oh Allah, make the difficulties of this blessed nation, make them easy. Ya Allah, make our struggle easy, Ya Rabb. Make our struggle easy. He says, and this is a beautiful metaphor to this is stanza number 27, where he is using the example from Surah An-Naml, right? The story of the ant, when the grand army of Hazrat Sulaiman was coming through, an ant said to another ant, hurry, 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 don't get trampled from the army of Sulaiman. And Hazrat Sulaiman heard that, and then right? He started to smile and he started to laugh. And he came down from his mount, and he did shukr to Ya Rabb. And that is what he's saying, that even because of a small ant, Hamdosh, they almost became equals, right? In the same ayah of the Quran, an ant is mentioned and one of the greatest prophets is mentioned. He's saying, Hamdosh Sulaiman, make us, we are nothing but ants, but Ya Allah, take us in the same breath as those who are noble, as the noble people. And then he says, make this rare love abundant once again. Make the temple dwellers and atheists of India into Muslims again. And then he says, a stream of blood, and this is actually not his poem, the Persian poetry, and this is actually from Sadi Shirazi. So he says, a stream of blood is dripping from my ancient longing, from all of my passions. And you can hear the echoes of screams inside of this wounded chest of mine. And he's saying, Ya Rabb, do you not hear these screams? Hear my du'as. Bue gul le gayi, oh man, this one's hard. Bue gul le gayi berune chaman raz chaman. Kya qiyamat hai ke khud phool hai ghammaz chaman. अहद गुल ख़त्म हुआ, टूट गया साज़ चमन, उड़ गए डालियों से ज़मज़म परदाज़ चमन. एक बुलबुल है कि है महवे तरन्नम अब तक, इसके सीने में है नग़मों के तलातम अब तक. So in order to understand this part, he is, right, as all things, right, there is an ebb and a flow and an ebb and a flow. And so now he is acknowledging that I am making dua for the ummah, but he is also acknowledging the shortcomings of the ummah. And this one hurts. I'm not going to lie, this one hurts. He is saying that although we as Muslims were the fragrance, we betrayed ourselves. The wind and the fragrance has actually ended up leaving the garden and has betrayed the garden. It has betrayed all of the secrets of the garden. How crazy is it that the flower itself has now began to slander the garden? How many Muslims do we see? It's like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if all this whole praying 5 times a day thing really is kind of a jam, right? Like this is that same, like, I don't know, like I was born Muslim, my name is Abdullah, but I don't know if I really believe in God. It's all kind of fire and brimstone, right? Right? We've all met those people, right? That's what he's lamenting, right? So many, I mean, I personally can say that, you know, unfortunately there are some friends of mine from childhood that I don't know if they're Muslim today. And so this is that analogy, right? This one cuts deep. He says, the fragrance of the rose has betrayed the garden by taking its own secret outside. How crazy is it that the flowers are slandering against the garden? He says, the time of the flower, the spring, has ended, and with it, broken is the song of the garden. It's almost like he has a high and then he like brings himself back down to earth. He has a high and then he brings himself back down to earth. The songbirds have flown from the branches of the garden, right? There's no more chahchahana, there's no more beautiful songs that we hear in the garden anymore. Now the garden is silent. But this is where, this is definitely him beating his own chest. He's saying there's one nightingale, it's me. I'm that, right? This is almost like he's saying, like he's a lawyer by trade. Allama Iqbal is a lawyer by trade, so he's saying, Ya Rab, I'm praying for everybody, but I'm going to pray for myself too, right? Everyone may have, right, it's sad to say, but there's a lot of people who have messed up. There's a lot of people who are Muslims who were supposed to be your flag bearers, the bearers of your fragrance, that were supposed to be doing your work, and they're no longer doing your work. But I still am. I promise, Ya Rab, I am. And he's saying only one nightingale is still full of melody. In its breast overflows a tempest of songs. And so now this is going to repeat again. Kumriya shakhe sanobar se gureza bhi hui. Patiyan phool ki jhad jhad ke pareshan bhi hui. वो पुरानी रोशन बाग की वीरां भी हुई. डालियां पेरहन बर्ग से उरियां भी हुई. कैद मौसम से तबीयत रही आजाद उसकी. काश गुलशन में समझता कोई फरियाद उसकी. He is saying that the doves have fled from the branches of the pine trees. He's saying the blossoms have drooped and began to die. And they have began shedding one petal at a time. He's saying those old memories of the garden have become desolate. The branches have shed their green kaftan. Kaftan is that like the jughad, like the grand, like that glamorous coat that the sultans would wear. Right? And so he's giving the analogy of beautiful green trees that when they shed their kaftan, when they shed their coat, it looks like the green coat is gone. Their ornamented coat. However, there is still one, and so he's just like, Ya Rab, the world's a crazy place, but I just want you to know, right? We'll get into that. He's saying, you know, I'm still here. And even if no one decides to share in my symphony, I will continue to sing. Even if I have to sing by myself. However, there's one nightingale whose song is not imprisoned by seasons. Right? Because usually the birds only sing in the spring. But he's saying, no. This nightingale will sing in the cold heart of winter. If only someone could understand what he was saying. If only there was someone to listen to his song, to understand what ails him, to understand why he sings, right? It's almost like that Maya Angelou book, right? I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, right? It's that same concept of like, this is a bird that is crying, and that's the analogy that he's giving of himself. Lutf, and this is once again, now he's starting to wallow a little bit in self-pity. Lutf marne mein hai baki, na maza jeene mein. Kuch maza hai to yahi khoon jigar peene mein. कितने बेताब हैं जोहर मेरे आईने में. किस कदर जलवे तड़पते हैं मेरे सीने में, इस गुलिस्तान में मगर देखने वाले ही नहीं, दाग जो सीनों में रखें वो लाले भी नहीं. This is once again, he's lamenting just the situation. And as I said before, right, when he wrote this poem, right, there was no place on the earth that actually had any semblance of Muslim sovereignty or dignity, right? Muslim, right? The British Raj, right, which is where we're all from, right? It's the India is the jewel on the crown of the British Empire, right? 88% of the entire world was colonized, right? The only places that weren't were honestly, sub-Saharan Africa and Antarctica and Afghanistan, some portions, and Makkah and Medina, right? Everything else was either the colonizer or the colony. And so when he's writing this, that's where this grief is coming from. I look around, Ya Rab, and I only see sadness. I see that we are in the darkest, and not only that, but what just happened, right? The Ottoman Empire just fell, right? There is no more Khalifa. Think about that. For the first time in Islamic history, there was no Khalifa. Up until then, there was always some flag bearer. It's gone now. This truly is unprecedented time in Islamic history. Unfortunately, we're still living in it now, but that was the darkest time. Now we have some semblance of places that are Muslim sovereign nations, right? Just quote unquote. But he's saying that life has no more death, nor can death bring any relief. The only thing I can relish is to eat out my own heart. Khune jigar peene mein, the blood of my own liver is to drink it. And it's a graphic analogy, but it's almost like eating your own heart out, right? Like, especially someone who's ever been in love and lost love will know exactly what eating your heart out means. And then he's saying, my mirror, my heart, is yearning to shine like a gem. I wish there were people to see themselves in it. There is so much radiance yet to be witnessed in my chest. But within this garden, this ummah, within this garden, there is no one to witness it. The poppies in the garden are without the sacred blemish in their heart. The example of the lala, the poppy, is that it is said that this has a little bit of a mystical kind of piece to it, but in Islamic kind of literature and history, wherever it is that they say that the poppy has the darkest red color. And the poppy will only grow, and the reason that it has the darkest red color is because it only grows where the martyr has died, where the shaheed has died. This is a common analogy in Islamic literature.
It's not just Islamic, right?
More than that, but certainly like wherever there is
Western culture.
Even in Western, I didn't realize that it was also a Western thing, but like, right, wherever there is pain and sacrifice for a higher cause, that is where the poppies grow. And in the heart of the poppy, there is a dark seed. And that is where, actually, like for anyone in medicine, right, opium comes from the poppy seed, and that is actually where that intoxication comes, right? Because no normal human being would ever give up their life or sacrifice for a higher cause. It's only a state of intoxication that would make them do it, right? And one of those things are, right, to have a story worth telling and a story worth fighting for. And so, is that done? Yeah, excellent. So this actually is the last stanza. And so inshallah we'll finish this. So now he's making a dua for himself. Chakis bulbul tanha ki nawa se dil ho. Now he's making a dua for himself. Chakis bulbul tanha ki nawa se dil ho. जागने वाले इसी बांगे दरा से दिल हों, यानी फिर अहद वफा से दिल हों, यानी फिर जिंदा नए अहद वफा से दिल हों, फिर इसी बादे दरीने के प्यासे दिल हों. अजमी खुम है तो क्या, मैं तो हिजाजी है मेरी, नगमा हिंदी है तो क्या, ले तो हिजाजी hai meri. Allah. So this is where honestly this is where he is okay then apni safai pesh karna, right? Like this is where like he is once again he's making as a lawyer he is almost like making a case for himself to Allah. He is saying, Ya Rab, the reason I'm making all of these cries, the reason I even did all of this, the reason I complained, the reason I'm doing all of this is that and he's calling himself the nightingale, may my cries rip the hearts asunder. May they tear the hearts of everyone who hears it, aka us. May the call of the marching bell awaken those drowsy hearts and bring them back. In other words, may the hearts be revived to a new age of loyalty to you, Ya Rab. May the thirsty heart yearn once again for that ancient wine of La ilaha illallah. The vine might be Ajam, might be Ajami, right? Like so there's Arab and then there's Ajam, right? We are non-Arabs. The vine might be Ajam or Hindi or Hindustani, but the wine that is being made is from Hijaz. In other words, my poetry might be in the Urdu language, but everything that I am saying is a reflection of the Quran and the Sunnah. Although the song is Hindi, the melody is from Hijaz. So that is where we are. I'm going to open it up to comments, and then I will do a conclusion. So that was it. We are now done with the complaint. Thoughts, feelings?
I think
Yes.
you get better at complaining.
Yes, sister.
I was noticing there's a lot of recursion that's happening towards the end, the later stanzas. So
Mhm.
like the nightingale,
Mhm.
the garden, the mention of wine.
Mhm.
I was wondering how you square what we see in the later verses, or the later stanzas I should say, with what we saw in 22 where it was talking about, it was just basically talking about like the gardens and how they're reserved for the non-believers and how
Mhm.
a lot of the things that, I think it was perhaps the one before this one, but it was really just talking about like how the gardens and everything are reserved for the people who are non-believing. I was wondering if then, maybe this is just a preamble for Jawab Shikwa, but I was wondering if maybe there's a reply to the initial complaint that's happening in the later part, where there's a recognition of, maybe the garden itself is reserved for people who are worldly in some way, but that we have some sort of inner garden or something that is this kind of like deeper. So it's almost like we see a recurring theme of like, okay, well, the broken nightingale's wing, and then the nightingale that basically he's calling himself the nightingale at the end. I just wonder if maybe there's some beginning of Jawab Shikwa here towards the later verses as well, where he's responding to his initial complaint, where he's basically saying like, we still have the gardens, we just need to recultivate them. We still have the nightingale song, we just need to sing it. The wine is there, but it's the intoxication of the spirit as opposed to the body. I'm just wondering kind of how you see those themes squaring themselves throughout the actual poem itself.
No, I think you did a really good job of kind of laying the groundwork for that. I think that's a really good kind of thought and question. I think there is a little piece of it is certainly like thinking about kind of just the madness that is poetry, right? Like poetry itself is, right, like I'm trying to use this same metaphor again, and I'm using that same metaphor, but now my mind is going in a different direction, and I'm now starting to come back to it. And it's just like for example, like the garden is for we got kicked out of our garden, and they now they have our garden. These are the things that we can do to try to exactly as you mentioned, like how can we recultivate that garden, and what can be our potential next steps. And there's certainly, like, it's almost like when you complain, there isn't always logic to your complaint, right? Where there is a lot of like, I'm going back and forth between all of these different things, and you can see kind of honestly the madness of it all, of like, I'm complaining, and I'm trying, and finally I'm starting to get right, like, and you can see how he himself is taking himself through that process, right? Where it's just like, I'm really angsty and really angry. Now that I've vented, I've been able to kind of, now I'm going to use that same metaphor, but just in a little bit of a nuancey different light. Does that help in any capacity? Okay.
I was gonna say this with me having no context to what's in Jawab Shikwa, but I think it's interesting that there's a lot of direct connections to, or parallels to Jannah itself for non-believers, that, you know, they're enjoying the wine, they're, you know, in the garden. So just as a few examples of maybe this is what the Jawab will show, that, you know, the non-believers, their Jannah is earth, and our Jannah would be the afterlife.
No, that's a beautiful thought, right? Like dunya jannatul kafir wa sijn al mu'min, right? It is the garden for the disbeliever, and it's a sijn, it's a cage for the believer.
Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful thought.
I have one question. I know you kind of explained, like, you know, why this isn't shirk, and, you know, kind of the complete opposite. Would you say that interpretation is a common interpretation that people have when they're reading this or go through this, or like, kind of like, if anyone were to educate a topic on this, such as what you're doing, is it a common occurrence to have to, you know, explain that to them and like an audience?
I think yes is the short answer, but I really do think that it almost stems from a deeper issue that the ummah, I think, is facing, right? Which is that when I guess kind of like, almost like, if your house is burning, you only really take the things that you think are the most important, and you don't really take your family albums, right? You don't really take your, you know, the small subtle things that bring you joy. You just make sure that that the people you're responsible for, your wife, your kids, you make sure that they're in safety, and so, like, it's almost similar in that way, where like the entire, like, the trauma of the Muslim ummah now is that, right, because, and this is a little bit where Jawab Shikwa comes, right? कि वो ज़माने में मुअज़्ज़िज़ थे मुसलमान होकर और तुम ख़ार हुए तारिक कुरान होकर, right? So, like, it's that that they were exalted, they were great because of the fact that they were Muslim, and now you have become debased because you have left the Quran. And in this kind of mad scramble, right, and I'm primarily talking about post-colonialism, right, like when the fact that, you know, there is no real difference between, right, Syria and Jordan, but for some reason those are different countries, right? We just know them as Bilad al-Sham, right? Where, like, when you have all of this kind of craziness, it becomes like the outward manifestations of Islam become really, really important. Like the 5 prayers, which is good, the hijab, which is great, but the spirit of it, it's almost like when your house is on fire, you forget about that portion. And I think that there is this really important rekindling that has to happen, right? Because without the spirit, the body is a corpse. You know what I'm saying? And so that's how I kind of square this, right? Where it's just like, it does sound shirky because we have become uncomfortable sharing our emotions as they are, right? It's when it comes to being the quote unquote loser, right? Like you, right? Like as Allama Iqbal even starts his whole poem, like, why should I be a loser, right? Why should I not complain? He's saying the same thing, where it's just like, the loser doesn't get to pick how the game is played. You know what I'm saying? And we have come into this loser mindset now. It's like almost like what people often talk about, which is like that, right? That just because we're no longer colonized physically, we're still mentally colonized, right? And so a lot of that, like in that process, we have had to square the fact that we are having so much difficulties in the world, and we have started to see, oh, like if we blindly follow the West, only then can we actually have some semblance of success, right? And so, and a lot of, I mean, even in the West, there's so much discomfort with talking about your emotions, really feeling what you feel, right? You're supposed to just drone on and work and be productive, right? And so the shirkiness comes in, like that's where I see it coming in, right? Where it's just like we have become so uncomfortable with this expression of raw emotion that it makes us, that it's hard for us to square that there can even be that this can even be done in a religious context. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Right? And it's just like, oh man, you're complaining to God, that's already shirk, right? Where it's just like coming back to it, it's just like, it's you're missing the point, right? If you're outwardly saying, right, like it's honestly one of the most beautiful things is that Islam is easy, right? In order to enter Islam, it says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Anything that doesn't push you outside of those two things is not shirk, right? Shirk certainly has a lot of different manifestations in the world, but the thing is that if something truly comes out of your heart, your soul, and it's an emotion, right? And there is no, I mean, we talk a lot about this in the mental health world, that there is no bad emotion. Emotions are simply manifestations, and all you need to do is feel them in order to be able to understand where they came from, so that you can better understand yourself, right? In an Islamic context, man arafa nafsi, arafa rabbi. Whoever knows themselves knows their Lord, right? And so that's where we've become uncomfortable. Just pray, 4 rakat namaz, Isha, kyunki ammi mujhe dekh rahi hai, right? I'm praying Isha because mom is watching me, right? Instead of I'm praying because I want to be back in conversation with my lover, right? But that just saying that will make people uncomfortable, right? It's just like, oh, you pray because you're in love? That's weird, right? No, you pray because you're scared. It's like, nah, right? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about when there's fire in the house,
Mm-hmm.
when we had the fire right next to our house,
Mm-hmm.
and the police kept on coming and saying, vacate. This happened a few years ago. And finally we got Jaya on the line and he said, this is close, you need to get out of here. So my wife's brother said, come over to our home. So as we were leaving, I said, you know, let me take this deed, this. I said, what am I doing? What am I going to use it for? So that's exactly what you were saying.
Thank you.
And I think many of these thoughts that, you know, one might interpret it like, you know, as strict, like it's not uncommon as a normal person to have these thoughts. Like as you were saying, I'm like, I've thought of that, you know, in my mind, like why us? Like why do, you know, we work so hard? Why are we kind of the losers of the world? You know, in a grand scheme of things. So I think it's almost human nature as being a Muslim today.
Yeah.
It's just very common to think like that.
Right? Kyun ziyakar bano, sood faramosh rahun, right? Like, why should I be a loser? Why should I continue to wallow in my own pity, right? Zoran Mamdani said this so beautifully so recently, right? To be Muslim is to expect indignity,
Yeah.
right? To be Muslim is to expect indignity. And it is our tolerance of that indignity that has allowed that indignity to continue, right?
The thing is that we've been told so many times that we're the third world.
Yeah.
It only manifests for me if I accept it. And we have accepted it.
Yeah, exactly. There is no third world unless we accept it. Absolutely.
Also, just to add to that,
Please.
so-called the third world, who created the third world? Sorry, I get too political, you know this, but like who bombed the countries into nothingness so that all the refugees want to come to the West, and then they complain about the refugees being in the West. Nobody wants to leave their homeland to come into like, you know, this foreign land, like just speaking from the experience of, you know, what my parents went through, what your parents went through. Nobody wants to leave their home.
Yeah. Like who in their right
And
mind?
be a second class citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess it's 9 o'clock, so let's go ahead and end this, inshallah. Iqbal's Shikwa is not just a poem. It is a manifesto. It is the anguished cry of a global ummah that has lost its way, and the rebellious love letter of a poet who refuses to give up on it, who refuses to give up on us. Iqbal gives a catharsis to the ummah, a release to the ummah through historical memory and divine protest and existential challenge. And through this, Iqbal calls the Muslims back, not just to the four walls of the masjid, but to power, purpose, and the future. This pan-Islamic revival to Iqbal is not some kind of nostalgic yearning for an empire of Iran. It is unity. It is a renewal through spirit, struggle, and unity. A unity of brotherhood and sisterhood that is forged in fire and passion and faith. Shikwa's message is just as urgent now as it was in 1909. And the complaint still echoes, as does the call to rise. Thank you. Anything good that you may have heard is from Allah and Allah alone. Only the mistakes and shortcomings are mine. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.